Abuse occurs when a participant and/or service provider exploits the plan provisions, which includes overbilling, providing treatment or services when not medically required, and overusing services. We'll have time at the end to address any questions, so keep note if you got something you'd like further clarification on. Who does it? Insurance fraud knows no distinctions. A healthcare practitioner, it's a massage therapist, an acupuncturist, a dentist, is just as likely to commit fraud as the employee insured under the group plan. Although there are perpetrators who carry out fraud in a systematic and planned manner, fraud also has its opportunistic offenders who take advantage of the faceless nature of insurance claims. We have a phrase we call a case of beer scenario. If you have a person who sends in, let's say, a massage therapy claim or an acupuncture claim through e-claims, they would send the claim in this morning, let's say it's today, it's Thursday, it's Thursday, and they would have the check back in their bank account by probably tomorrow. Now we have enough money to go to the bar on Friday night or buy a case of beer and have a party. The insurance company, most often, didn't ask them for anything other than the claim submission. They paid. So if it's an $80 bill, $80 is back in their bank account. This is quite a temptation for somebody that doesn't have any money for the weekend. I'm just going to send in a claim. Then I had a claim. They didn't ask for a receipt. They didn't ask for any confirmation. This is pretty neat. I'll have money for the weekend. So it's quite simply how you fall into some of these situations. It's faceless, it's nobody gets hurt, all of those situations run through their minds. Who are the perpetrators out there? When an individual or patient perpetrates a fraud scheme against his or her own group plan, this is called beneficiary fraud. When the treatment provider and medical equipment vendors on their own act to take advantage of a group insurance plan, this is called provider fraud. When there's collusion between providers and patients, this is essentially a combination of provider fraud and beneficiary fraud. This scenario opens the door to whole new sets of possible schemes to defraud the insurer, and from our perspective, this is the worst case scenario. When we audit paramedical claims, for example, we will phone the provider. We will ask them if that individual had that service that they billed us for on that date. If the provider is part of the fraud, then that's our check and balance gone. Employees' involvement. There's a couple of different categories that are here. The first one is what we call the innocent. This is the employee doesn't know. The employee who has had their group benefits used or overcharged without their knowledge. That's like somebody using your credit card without your knowledge. You didn't do anything wrong, you just happened to be victimized. Then there's the half guilty. And this is where a lot of situations fall into. This is the one who knows but pretends they don't. The employee purchases a pair of orthotics and obtains a free pair of shoes. The employee goes down to Lens Crafter, buys a new set of glasses, gets reimbursed for them, and they have a 1-year return policy. You take the glasses back. Okay? Half guilty. Then there's the professional, the one who really knows and goes out of the way to make things happen. An employee who fabricates receipts or colludes with questionable practitioners to abuse the group plan. Returns product after receiving reimbursement, for example. Why does anybody do this? Motives? There's greed, ego, need, again, the beer case scenario. Opportunity, the plan design lets them do it, it's easy. Able to get away with it. Group insurance companies typically audit 1 out of every 8 to 10 electronic claims submitted. That's pretty good odds. not getting caught. Rationalization doesn't hurt anybody. Others do worse. I'm entitled to it. Well, the insurer makes so much money anyways. What do they care? This one's a little surprising. What's public opinion about fraud? Nearly 1 out of 4 people say that overstating the value of claims to insurance companies is acceptable. So look around the room. 1 out of 4 of us, theoretically. More than 1 out of 10 say they approve of submitting insurance claims for treatments that were not provided. 2/3 of respondents linked insurance fraud to offenders' need for money, while nearly 24% said they believe that people who commit insurance fraud do so because they believe they pay too much for their insurance. About half of all respondents said that people commit insurance fraud because they can get away with it. That's scary. Consequences. What are the consequences of group insurance fraud? Well, the way I set costs for my clients is called retrospective pricing. In other words, I looked at what happened last year to set your price for next year. If people are fraudulently making claims during your experience, I raise your rates, everybody loses. The employees and the employers who are participating in the premium payment are all paying for fraud. So as the claim experience deteriorates and if the same coverage is maintained, the cost of the group plan will increase significantly, making coverage less affordable both to employer and employee members. In order to maintain affordable premiums, the plan sponsor may be forced to reduce the level of coverage offered to its employees. In extreme cases, the employer may not be able to continue to offer health and dental benefits for their employees. Pretty good consequences. We've talked about the problem a little. Now let's talk about some possible solutions. First off, there's detection. That's where we come into it. We watch for providers that appear to be linked to questionable billing practices or clinics not duly recognized by regulatory bodies. At Empire Life, for example, in 2016, we've doubled the size of our fraud team, just because this is a problem that's escalating. You can make sure that when you're buying drugs that you use drug cards. Drug cards are real time. If you're trying to do something that the plan doesn't cover, real time the claim will be declined. So make sure you use drug cards whenever you can. And we also provide claims examiners with awareness training to identify potentially fraudulent or abusive claims. We have what we call tickles when we look at a claim. The technology will throw out certain claims. For example, if you're getting acupuncture and you're under 5 years of age. If you're getting everybody in your family is maximizing massage therapists, for example. So there's a bunch of ticklers that are in the system that will throw the claim out for examination. So detection is a big part of what we do. We also have a responsibility to provide deterrence as well. So we want to set example by pursuing recovery of funds. So if you go after somebody in a group, usually other people within that group will find out the insurer caught on and you were caught. And so theoretically, the risk of getting caught will cause you other people in the group not to abuse the system. We help with the various advisors and brokers that we deal with to review and update contractual terms. For example, something that we're going to see a lot more of in the future is that services be medically necessary. Make sure plan members and sponsors are made aware of the consequences of fraud and abuse. So there's an education component as well. Preventative measures. Educate the employer, plans administrators, and employees of the necessity for claims audits. As I mentioned earlier, the industry right now audits about 1 out of every 8 to 10 paramedical claims. You're going to see this go up to 1 in 5, 1 in 3, and at some point, if the problem doesn't get any better, you might see every claim audited. So now we've lost the advantages of using e-claims to speed things up and make it more efficient. We've got to stop and look at every claim, costs go up. Plan design is the single most important element influencing the vulnerability of the plan to fraud and abuse. Any plan where the employee does not have to take out their wallet when you visit a paramedical practitioner is more vulnerable than one that does. As soon as the employee is paying part of the bill, theoretically they're going to pay a bit more attention to what the provider is charging them. Okay? Some examples, as mentioned, any medical or dental service, especially paramedics, that are reimbursed at 100%. Okay? Any vision plan where the lenses are unlimited. Again, you'll see very cheap frames all of a sudden, very expensive lenses. So providers know how to manipulate what they charge based on what you're reimbursed. How many people have ever phoned up a new dentist, for example, and say, I moved into your neighborhood, I'm looking for a dentist. What's the first question do they ask? Are you insured? What's your insurance plan? Send me a copy of your booklet before they've even seen you. So what does that tell you? Support hose, surgical stockings, there's a lot of items that are covered in group insurance plan that are not used a lot, but they really have no controls over them. We don't put a limit on the dollar amount for some of these items, and therefore the providers know this and they start charging $175 for a pair of support hose. It's like NASA in the space program. If you don't put price limits on it, you get a $500 screwdriver. Okay. Some examples of provider and member situations that we've seen. I could give you lots of horror stories, but we won't today. Licensed practitioners preparing false receipts for a fee. We recently had a medical clinic in Calgary where the receptionist was working with patients as they came in to falsify claims, and they split whatever was reimbursed by the insurer, 50%, 50%. So again, when we do audits, we phone the practitioner, did this person come to your clinic and have this service provided on such and such a date? Sure they did, because they're part of the problem. A provider and members mutually agree to modify the nature of the treatment to appear on the claim in order to maximize reimbursement. This is sometimes fairly innocuous. During one of my wife's pregnancies, I went with her for her first appointment with the doctor, and he told her that she needed to take maternity vitamins. And he turned around and looked at me and said, do you have a group plan at work? Because I could write this up on prescription so you can get it reimbursed. Sure, no problem. Technically, that's fraud. So those vitamins weren't, the prescription wasn't required. So this happens very innocently, very innocuously. Practitioner agrees to prepare the invoice in the name of a dependent to whom services were never provided or services never dispensed. Now let's say you have a $500 annual maximum on acupuncture, and you reach that fairly quickly. Sometimes providers say, well, if you have any children, I'll just put future invoices in your children's name, because they each get $500 too. Provider offers to fabricate claims for medical supplies for a fee. And again, the clinic I mentioned in Calgary is a good example of that. Red flags. This is more for insurance companies, but we look for aggressive claimants inquiring on the status of the claim very shortly after submission. And most people are very tolerant. We have sort of a window of about 10 days to pay a claim before somebody typically complains. So if you got somebody complaining the day after they send a claim in, throws up a bit of a red flag. What's the rush here? Escalating issues directly to the plan administrator, usually without contacting the call center first. So I get several calls a year from the plan administrators. What are you people doing? Joe sent his claim in yesterday and you haven't paid it, what's going on here? Again, a bit of a red flag. This is a little bit too soon, too much too soon. Reluctance by the claimant or practitioner to provide any requested information, arguing that the plan does not require this information. This is fairly common. We'll often go back, for example, if you've got an acupuncture treatment on a child under 5 years of age, it's quite possible that that child is quite ill, and these are legitimate services. But we might go back and ask them for a bit more information. And if the response is, it's none of your damn business. The benefit says you pay, you pay. So again, a little bit of a red flag. Lack of response to question claims. This is often the most common one we see. We go back, somebody submits a claim, looks a little funny, we go back and ask a question, we never hear from them again. Then they just submit a new claim in the future and pretend like the first one never happened. A couple more red flags. Claimant waits several months after being asked for additional information and files a complaint, pretends to forward the information requested months ago. Claims submitted on old versions of claim forms. Most claim forms these days are on the website. Not like the old days when we used to give a kit with all the claim forms in it to each employer. So it's quite possible to be using an old claim form if your kit had old forms in it. These days there's no excuse for that, so if you see old claim forms, perhaps the provider has got a stack of them in their office and they're just writing them up. Frequent submissions in minimal amounts under the radar, like who's going to worry about a $10 claim? So I'll just submit a lot of those. So that's the official part of my presentation today. I'm more than happy to answer any questions.
So what are as the plan provider, what rights do we have now, information, because years ago they took away all our ability to look at information to potentially protect us as the insurance provider?
That's a good question because, again, if you've been around as long as I have, in the good old days.
Excuse me, what was the question?
The question is, what rights does the employer have given privacy regulations, and the whole process has sort of cut the employer out of the claims submission cycle. In the good old days, all claim forms were on paper. They went to your employer would look at them, verify information on them, and actually have to sign them. Personally, I'm not unhappy that we don't do that anymore. Because this is not nobody's information to know. Your employer shouldn't know what treatment you're receiving, what drugs you're on, all those types of things. So that has really tied the hands. In much the same way that our hands are tied when we're doing audits. Like I said, we don't have a lot of ability other than to ask if the service was provided, verify what was charged for the service and the date. So it is difficult to stop it completely because privacy prevents both the employer and ourselves from digging too far. Again, we often find that if we put up any sort of resistance, we ask for questions, we ask for a bit more information, most people disappear. So just asking the question sometimes solves the problem. But our hands are tied, both the employer and ourselves. So, not much of an answer, I know. Any other questions?
Sorry, just kind of following off that question. If someone was found to be submitting fraudulent claims, are you then allowed to tell the employer so the employer is aware of that misuse of the policy?
Technically, no.
Oh, wow.
This clinic that I told you about in Calgary, by the time we caught them, they had fraudulently made $19,000 in claims just for our little one group that we had with them. We have to assume that receptions was also doing similar situations with other insurance companies. So theoretically, we could have a six-figure fraud there. We phoned the Calgary Police, our claims area phoned the Calgary Police. We laid out the problem for them, and they basically laughed at us. What do you expect me to do about it? I said, well, it's fraud. And they said, get in line. So it's much the same way as somebody steals $100 charge on your credit card company, nobody does anything about it, really. It's the cost of doing business. There's a little bit of that attitude. The fact that I mentioned earlier, we doubled the size of our fraud area, and we're pushing for more police involvement. These are, again, we're one of 18 group insurers in Canada, so if we're losing money, everybody's losing money, and this is big dollars. We have to work with the local law enforcement and make sure they take these situations as serious. And some provinces are better than others, depends on the levels of crime. This is a real low-level crime, it's not going to get any resources attached to it. As far as telling the employer, in this situation, we went back to the claimant, indicated in that particular case, the claimant was a new immigrant, and I think they were afraid that this somehow would affect their immigrant status. So they confessed rather readily about how the fraud was perpetrated. They went down to the police on their own, they made a report, and they gave us full restitution, but that is not common. We were not, let's say the employee told us to take a hike, we were not able to tell the employer much other than the fact that one of their employees had committed fraud, and they were removing the fraudulent amounts from their claims experience. In other words, we were taking the loss rather than them. We might work with their advisor to make sure they might want to tighten up their plan design so it makes it more difficult down the road. And again, we know that providers there, even though the police hasn't done anything with them, we would probably not pay any future claims submitted by that provider. So there's a few things you can do, but not all that effective.
Speak to fraud, abuse, as it pertains to short-term disability claims.
Ooh.
Can we repeat that question?
Can we talk about fraud abuse as it pertains to short-term disability? Short-term disability claims, does Saskatchewan have public auto insurance? Or is it all private? I know Manitoba and BC, we have public auto insurance. In other words, government-run auto insurance. And fraud in the auto insurance industry is rampant. Same situations. They have providers, so they have doctors, they have lawyers, all involved with these phony claims, personal injury claims and car accidents. Same situation. In a disability claim, you usually have a medical physician involved. You used to have service providers, chiropractor, physiotherapists, and there's some collusion, possibly. I would think there's so many people involved, usually in a disability claim, and we have the right as the insurer to investigate them. And the claims are quite a bit larger, so you would invest more time in investigating them. So there's a lot less, percentage-wise, fraud in disability claims, just because you look at them a lot closer. And again, you know, how much money do you want to spend investigating an $80 paramedical claim? Because you're not going to spend thousands. If it's a $25,000 disability claim, you'll spend more money, time, and it's harder to figure out. It's there, it's rampant in all parts of insurance. Any questions? Hopefully not too far behind schedule. Thank you for your attention this morning, and have a good day.